Look, there are plenty of players in this Newcastle team who are coming in for a lot of praise this season. Alexander Isak, Bruno, Tonali, you know, the usuals. But one man who's maybe impressed us all a little bit more in recent months, more than any of us expected, is Jacob Murphy on that right wing. So let's look at him a little bit closer and how he's answering a couple of problems that we didn't solve in the summer. Welcome back to Black White Banter, ladies and gentlemen. I'm back outside St James's Park, hoping it doesn't rain. I haven't been outside here doing a video for a while when it's not a match day because they have been coming thick and fast. But I decided to plonk myself out here today to talk about one man on that right side of midfield who still doesn't have his own chant, which, by the way, is pretty criminal. It's Jacob Murphy. King of the memes, the best probably personality in the dressing room, and you can guarantee when that group of players goes on a night out, he's the most up for a laugh, he's the last one standing, and he's probably the one chucking up in the toilets at 4 AM from too many Jaeger bombs. But his performances since this amazing run of 10 wins in 11, for some people have maybe gone a little bit under the radar, and those numbers are matching up, whereas I can't help but ask myself, if we saw this performance from a brand new shiny right winger that we'd spend 40 million on in the summer, would a lot of us be pretty happy? Now look, before I get into all the positive stuff and all the graphs and all the stats, if you're not a stat man, luckily you've got me to lean on a little bit. You might fall over because, you know, I don't go as in depth as some other YouTube channels. But look, Jacob Murphy still comes with his critics. And what I will say before I dive into all the positives is that when you watch Jacob Murphy match by match, there are still so many areas of his game that are lacking. His quality in possession sometimes, he can surrender possession quite a little bit too easily. He maybe is lacking that extra bit of class that would send him to the next level, that would solve those right wing problems. And generally speaking, match by match, he doesn't always play well for the full 90 minutes. But there's a flip side to this. There's a total flip side to this, and that is output for a right winger. Not only output, which I think is really important here, it is how Jacob Murphy fits into an Eddie Howe system. So let's talk about those now that I've got that negative stuff a little bit out the way. Jacob Murphy admitted himself in an interview before Christmas that whilst goals and assists are great, he does not like to measure himself against those, and they do not necessarily mean success for him. What he meant by that is, which is a very fair statement, if I've got a goal and assist in a football match on a Sunday after 6 pints the night before, but I know I've generally played pretty shite apart from that, giving the ball away, mistiming a couple of fouls, losing my man on a corner, lots of different factors on the pitch when your team is trying to play a certain system, you are not going to come away from the game and say that you played well. You're going to be happy with the goal and assist, and that all ties into this Eddie Howe system. Jacob Murphy has been with Eddie Howe from the start, like so many players have, and I think he suits this system down to a T. And let's just look at the most recent match against Southampton. Yes, it was a game we were expected to win, but Southampton set up in a way that they play with attacking fullbacks. Who doesn't in the modern game? Walker-Peters, he's got incredible stats for the position that they're in as a team fighting relegation, and he flipped sides for this one and was on the other side. Jacob Murphy in that system basically worked for most of the match when their fullback pushed on as part of a back five. He then allowed Bruno to push on in that press that Eddie Howe's team like to do, really get up the pitch whilst Murphy slotted in on the full-back. This was a strict sort of press that Eddie Howe implemented, and I thought it worked relatively well. We didn't see too much threat from their full-backs. The less said about the goal we conceded from the other side, the better. This is where Jacob Murphy comes into play in his own, his defensive work. His support in fullback areas, his support when Tino or Trippier go up the other end of the pitch. And I'm just going to dollop his heat map on the screen. It looks like Jacob Murphy has taken a big old dollop of shite on the pitch. It is huge. It is here, there and everywhere, to quote a famous chant about Ben Arfa years ago. He is literally a man who covers all bases. He does have pace. He does like to progressively carry the ball up the pitch, but he is always on the last man looking for that ball in the transition. And these sorts of players in this sort of system can be imperative to making sure this Newcastle team ticks. And I'm going to cast your mind back to Almiron, and I'll be doing a separate video on him this week if he leaves. So many Newcastle fans do not like Miguel Almiron. With his assist output and his lack of quality with the right foot, who could blame him? Who could blame them? But Almiron was imperative in Newcastle getting that Champions League spot 2 years ago. And why was that? Because his work rate and his energy and his discipline with that work rate and that press suits this Eddie Howe team in transition, from the front line all the way to the back. And Jacob Murphy's work rate cannot be underestimated in that way. And by him saying that goals and assists don't tell the full picture, I totally understand why. And his work rate on that right-hand side in this last 2 months has been plain to see for everyone. So let's start back to my question at the start of this video. Would some of you Newcastle fans be relatively happy if we'd signed some shiny player in the summer for 40, 50 million with a big fancy surname who had the same level of goals and assists right now as what Jacob Murphy has? That's a good question, isn't it? And I'd be curious to get your thoughts in the comments. If we were all honest with ourselves, I would probably assume the answer would be yes. Contributing to 10 wins in 11 as well, he would be fitting nicely into this team. So I couldn't help but compare out of curiosity to a certain Brian Mbeumo from Brentford. Everybody's talking about him. He's having a great season, as are Brentford, and he's certainly someone that keeps being linked on social media with Newcastle. Well, it's interesting because Jacob Murphy actually comes up on trumps on assists, expected assists, and generally speaking, shot-creating actions. Brian Mbeumo takes the goal chart, as you'd expect him to, because he is their main man. But it's just fascinating, and I digged a little bit deeper. Jacob Murphy compared to a certain Bernardo Silva, you know, the Portuguese winger who's won it all at one of the best clubs in the world. Jacob Murphy, according to a lot of the stats, is having a much better season than Bernardo Silva, who currently sits with his Man City team on the same amount of points as Newcastle United. It's just food for thought, Newcastle fans, and I'd be curious to get your thoughts in the comments. I personally think Jacob Murphy has a ceiling. I do think matches like the Leicester game before Christmas, he didn't play that well but scored twice. There is moments his all-round game isn't quite always there. But if you look at the level of output, you look at the relationship he's got with Alexander Isak, I think he is doing a trusty old job, and most importantly, and this is key, he suits that Eddie Howe system. And look at the stats to finish on how he has improved since Eddie Howe has come into the football club. Plain to see in black and white, and they make for very, very interesting reading. Where do you see Jacob Murphy in the future? Let me know down below, because I think we still need a winger, but I do not think Jacob Murphy falls on the list of dead wood that might include Miguel Almiron, that might include, well, the list could go on, couldn't it, of players that are just making up the numbers. Maybe Jamal Lascelles. There are a few that we do need to keep moving to grow. Jacob Murphy has more than proved his worth, and he's really, really starting to prove that he has a bit of quality in the final third that we've needed on this great run. Get down below. Let's get a Jacob Murphy chant organised if we can. Give us some suggestions in the comments. And as always, drop us a like, drop us a follow, get us a subscribe, and get Black and White Banter across all social media. Keep the faith, Newcastle fans. Now I'm going to go and think about a Jacob Murphy chant before it rains. How are you, lads?